Hi guys, Bob for Bob's Movie Review here, and today I'd like to review for you a movie I recently watched called The Big Short. This movie has a 130-minute runtime, rated R, stars Christian Bale, Michael Scott, also known as Steve Carrell, Ryan Gosling, and Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, I would say, kind of isn't in this movie a lot, and I don't think there's really a star. I don't think if you watch this movie you could really say who is the star of this movie. I hadn't seen previews or anything before I picked this one up, so I wasn't 100% sure what to expect. I thought this movie was kind of like, I know this is about the collapse of the housing market, and these guys kind of got rich off it, and I thought they were kind of they all knew each other, and they kind of like all figured it out together, but that's really not at all how this movie goes. So Christian Bale's character, he runs this, I don't know, these a lot of technical terms, and then they try to explain them. I was still confused. Honestly. So he runs this fund. People give him money to invest, like for their retirement or whatever, and he's supposed to make them money. That's his job. He's supposed to pick out the investments that will make money and put their money to work for him. So he's kind of, I don't know, he's really weird and eccentric and maybe a little crazy. And he's kind of just studying the housing market, and he says, you know, the housing market is going to collapse. Now, I guess, almost 40 years ago now, they created this thing where the banks would put all these home mortgages together, and then you could buy them, and they were supposed to make you money. I'm not sure how that works exactly, but you're supposed to be able to make money off it. Now, it created basically millionaires off it because of all the fees the bank would charge. Would make them a ton of money. And again, I don't understand how this works. So fast forward to like the mid 2000s or so, and if you guys aren't familiar, I mean, I was trying to buy a house at this time. There were a lot of, foreclosed houses. One of the biggest problems was banks were just giving out mortgages to anybody. You didn't have to prove you had a job. You didn't have to prove you had income, because what they would do is they would just sell these loans, and then they would get their fees off it, and they didn't care if people weren't making their payments. So Christian Bale figures out, hey, a lot of home loans are in default. They're not paying their payments. This is, the housing market's going to collapse. So he has this idea called a short. Now, I think the idea of a short already exists, but the idea of shorting the housing market, he came up with it or something, where he basically goes to the bank and he's like, I want to buy $200 million worth of mortgage loans, and I cannot remember what they call it. It's some term. And you're going to ensure that I don't lose money, and if I do, you're going to pay me so much money. And the banks say, in 30 years, nobody's ever lost any money. It doesn't happen. It's not gonna happen. And everybody, all the analysts and the banks and everything, they're all just saying everything's perfectly fine. Like, everybody's kind of hiding the truth or ignorant to the truth. And so he ends up buying like $1.3 billion worth. And so then Ryan Gosling's character overhears this. Now, I did not understand his motivation in the whole thing. And again, it's one of those things where I think you kind of got to be familiar with the financial market to really know what his whole deal was. But he actually works for the bank, and he goes to Steve Carell's character, who's another guy kind of like Christian Bale, who invests money for people. And he says, the market's going to collapse. You invest in this, and you're going to make a ton of money. And Steve Carell's kind of like, well, you work for the banks. Why are you telling us this? And I didn't understand his motivation. Now, so Steve Carell, he doesn't want to blindly invest the money, so they start investigating, and they go to this housing development, and like every house in the neighborhood's for sale. And they go to the houses, and they're just all empty and abandoned, like people just left. And they keep investigating, and they're like, you know what? The housing market is going to crash. So they start buying these too. Now, there's another group, and I don't know their names. I don't think I'd ever seen them before. They also want to, but they can't because they're like too low down the totem pole or something. So they need Brad Pitt's character to help them, and he's kind of retired from Wall Street, and he agrees to help them. So they're all three groups are kind of, in a way, hoping, obviously, that the housing market will crash because then they will become rich, but then a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, lose their houses, and we'll get into the recession that we did. This is a true story if you can't figure that out already. So that's kind of what the movie is about. It also has this really weird filming style where they all, I think all the characters would talk to the camera. Maybe not every character, but a lot of them would talk to the camera. There's this one part where they're like, okay, that's not what really happened, but here is. And it's like, well, why'd you even put that part in the movie? Like, what? And then they would be like, well, and here to explain this is Selena Gomez. And then Selena Gomez would be talking about whatever they were talking about. It was interesting and different. This movie feels a lot like a documentary. And while it did have its interesting points about the banks and what they were doing, and how kind of Wall Street just created this whole thing, because they were doing all this crazy stuff. They were doing this other thing where it's like side bets and then side bets on side bets and side bets and side bets on side bets, and they kind of created this whole thing. And greedy people who were giving out these home loans to people who obviously couldn't afford them just so they could get their percentage. You know, they created this whole recession in America that really was harmful to a lot of people. And it's an interesting story, but I also felt like it was a little boring, honestly, because it's mostly just guys talking about financial stuff that you and me and most people don't understand. So you kind of are just not understanding what's going on, even though they did make that attempt to explain it to you. And maybe you're smarter than me and you understood. I'm still kind of confused, and so I found this one a little boring, but it was still an interesting movie, good to watch. If you haven't seen it already, I think everybody in this was pretty superb. I didn't understand why, but Steve Carrell had this weird accent. I don't know if he was trying to talk like the actual person, but he had this just really strange kind of way he was talking. But as I said, they all had good performances, and it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it already. I think for a score on this, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Not a movie you're probably going to want to rewatch many times, if ever, just because, you know, it's kind of boring. If you guys were at all affected by this whole collapse in the housing market, maybe you find it interesting, because they do go into a lot of detail about the banks and how the banks were hiding everything. And but yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you guys next time.